Hi there, I'm Rachel Gable, and this is your fair cattle markets for the 9th of September. And while it's not directly related to fair cattle markets, it is pretty important. The NCBA is standing up and putting some pressure on Congress to protect family-owned businesses, specifically food and ag-related businesses. There has been a letter sent by the House Ways and Means committee leadership, and the Senate Finance Committee leadership, urging them to consider the implication that changes to federal tax policy, that's the stepped-up basis, will have on family-owned ag businesses. When drafting legislation to implement President Biden's Build Back Better agenda, it is critical that the American Families Plan take into consideration how to support farms and ranches. Congress, this according to Senior Executive Director of Government Affairs Danielle Beck, she said, Congress must consider the complex structure of family-owned ag businesses that serve as the backbone of rural economies. Therefore, understand how changes to long-standing provisions in the tax code could be detrimental to the financial viability of these businesses as they transfer to the next generation. This is not a partisan issue, she said. In fact, it's an issue that affects every single American. With more than 370 million acres expected to change hands in the next 20 years, preserving long-standing provisions in the federal tax code is a win-win for producers and consumers alike. Whether their family has preserved the land for generations or they are a beginning, veteran, or minority farmer getting their start in the industry, without federal tax policy that supports a viable business climate for the next generation of producers, building on the environmental and economic contributions of today's producers is impossible and risks compromising our nation's ability to produce a safe, abundant, and affordable food supply. The consequences of taxing family farms and ranches out of business completely undermines the Build Back Better agenda. Some federal tax policy proposals have been accompanied by the promise of purported protections to family-owned businesses. However, signatories on the letter stress that those accommodations may not necessarily apply to the diverse complexity of ownership structures across family-owned agriculture entities. The only way to ensure the future viability of family-owned business, specifically farms and ranches, is to fully preserve critical provisions such as stepped-up basis, like-kind exchanges, the Section 199A small business deduction, and maintain the current estate tax code provisions. I also was one of 28 witnesses on the Congressional Redistricting Commission hearing this morning. There was 2 meetings today. I was in the morning one. I wanted to read you really quickly what I said. I have too many tabs open. It's a theme with me. I don't know. The new map, perhaps you heard me yelling and screaming about it on Facebook yesterday. The new map puts producers on the northwest part of the state with Boulder, and puts producers on the eastern, northeastern, and southeastern parts of the state with Fort Collins and Castle Rock. It makes southern Colorado its own district, all the way from Grand Junction down to the corner and all the way over to Los Animas County. And then all of kind of the little mountain, like Teller County and those around it, are kind of its own thing. And then Weld County is part of North Denver. So if you're in Colorado and you're not clutching your pearls, you need to be. It's a mess. This new map is completely different than anything we've seen previously. And of course, it's a congressional redistricting. So after the census, every 10 years, Constitution requires that we redistrict and redraw the congressional and legislative district lines. We're adding a congressional district this year to 8, and trying to figure out where that goes and who needs to go where has been quite a project, but this is what I said to them. I'm Rachel Gable, and I'm speaking to you today from my family's commercial cattle operation in Morgan County in northeastern Colorado. Thank you, commissioners and staff, for dedicating your time and talents to the commission. You're doing important work, and I appreciate it. I'm asking you today to abandon the first staff plan congressional district map and return to the preliminary map to improve upon without mixing rural areas and with urban areas. By drawing such a large southern district, The spirit of competitive districts and communities of interest are both sacrificed, and the voice of rural Colorado is drowned out completely. While Southern Colorado appears to be its own community of interest in the staff map, it does so at the expense of every other community of interest. It is not possible for livestock producers in places like Meeker to be adequately represented by someone elected by Boulder voters. Likewise, a farmer in Holly or a cattleman in Carville cannot be adequately represented by someone elected by voters in Fort Collins or Castle Rock. The staff map ignores rural Colorado, widening the already gaping rural and urban divide. The families who shoulder the multi-billion-dollar agriculture industry have long been at the mercy of more urban voters, and moving forward, completely ignoring the communities of interest in rural Colorado would be the proverbial nail in the coffin for producers and the communities they keep alive. The current staff map fails rural Colorado by ignoring the different ways in which rural areas and agriculture use water and other resources. It ignores the testimony from around the state, and it thumbs its nose at the agriculture industry, an industry that feeds, fuels, and clothes the remaining 98% of the state. There should be no doubt that rural communities on both slopes are distinct communities of interest. This has been aptly illustrated by urban Colorado voting to reintroduce wolves, failed efforts to use statute and the ballot proposal process to destroy the $4 billion beef industry, and the drastically different needs in terms of healthcare, education, labor, policy concerns, core beliefs, and the history and stories that the communities are built upon. Please return to the preliminary congressional district map and approve upon it so that rural communities in both eastern and western Colorado have a seat at the table, rather than being a featured dish on the menu. I'm Rachel Gable, and this is your Fair Cattle Markets update for the 9th of September.